commented on Twitter that Twitter is the gateway drug to blogging. I wholeheartedly disagree. Of the many, many messages I send out on Twitter, 5 of them could have easily been blog entries. In fact, 2 of the messages over the past week probably would have turned into blog entries had I not already released the emotions and thoughts around each over Twitter. That's kind of a shame. The entries would have been interesting, but I truly don't feel like writing them now. I already did in very short form. A blog entry requires writing, a somewhat decently written article focused around a thought. There is time involved no matter how short the entry is, which means there is always a time delay from the moment I come up with the thought to the satisfaction of posting the entry. A computer is also required since I don't like typing on my BlackBerry. I used to come up with ideas for blog entries and save them for later. I'd email them to myself at home, scribble them down on a Post-it. These days, instead of saving an idea for a later blog entry, I immediately post it on Twitter. All you need for Twitter is a phone. There isn't any real writing or time involved since the largest a tweet can be is 140 characters. I'm able to immediately release the thought and forget about it, or watch and see what other people think, which, let's face it, is what a lot of us do when we're writing anything we share with the public. I've asked questions in this blog. I'm doing it right now. I've also done the same over Twitter. We all crave interaction and responses. Why wait until a blog entry can be written when we can instantly get the thought out over Twitter? I know I've been blogging less since I first started using Pounce, then moved to Twitter. For me, Pounce was the gateway drug to Twitter. Twitter's character limit is truly what did it for me. I can't think a lot about a tweet. It's too short. I could blab a bit on Pounce. We all once said that push technology would change the internet. Pointcast, right? Well, it took a while, but look, it happened. I always have Twitter on, and I'm always checking it. It's right there, pushed to my screen. From the major to the mundane, the 154 people I'm following on Twitter right now are always talking about something I'm interested in. And believe me, following 154 people is a somewhat small number for Twitter. I get my news from Twitter. My coworkers laugh at me for how often I end up saying, I just read on Twitter. Who needs a newspaper when I have CNN breaking news on Twitter? To those of you who haven't discovered Twitter yet, beware. Remember your life before email? One day you'll remember your life before Twitter. I truly believe the impact will be just as significant. We may not always be using this one service, but the live streaming Twitter has created won't be going away anytime soon. We are genuinely interested in the tiny details of other people's lives, just like they're interested in the details of ours. They say everyone's a voyeur. Do I really need to know that somebody is going to get a glass of Coke or that someone else is putting the baby to bed? Not at all, but I keep following, and find me on Twitter as StephanieBamBam.
Next is Zan from A Cup of Tea and a Wheat Penny.
Note to self in the age of the internet, a necessary reminder. You do not need to like Animal Collective. You do not need to finish that amazing new novel that everyone is talking about, or even start it. You do not need to click on every link or link to every click. It's okay to mark all as read. You do not need to optimize your stats. You do not need a URL. You do not need to own your own home, but it would be nice. You do not need to furnish said home with Eames rockers, but you can if that's what you like. It's okay if green is your favorite REM album. It's okay if you organize your bookshelves by color, or if you don't organize them at all. And that you occasionally say no to parties. You do not need to turn up to everyone. You do not need to super poke, or update, or hit shift refresh. You do not need to consider Barbados when you really want to be in the Hebrides. You do not need to like Helvetica. You do not need to be into DIY. You do not need to try this great new restaurant just because they said so. Thank you.
All right, now is the parenting category. And first is Casey from Moosh and Indy.
Hi. Can we first clap for Mr. Lady again? And then can I blame her for making me cry? Here we go. I overdosed on prescription medication when I was 7 months pregnant, on purpose. I didn't want to be pregnant anymore. Pregnancy was literally killing me. I hadn't eaten more than a half cup of food at a sitting in 7 months. 90% of what went into my mouth came back out. Every muscle in my body ached from dry heaving. My throat was constantly scratchy from vomiting up bile. And no one believed that I was truly sick. One woman told me I was eating the wrong kind of cracker. Other people told me I was being overdramatic. Several people thought I was faking. My husband thought I was a wimp. Depression built gradually. I told myself to go to sleep and I'd feel better in the morning. One morning I didn't feel better. I felt worse. I called into work, got a glass full of water, and took well over a dozen pills, plus a Zofran and a sleeping pill, so I could fall asleep while it happened and not vomit all that I had just taken. My husband found me an hour later. I don't remember much of the next 12 hours. I woke up in an ER, monitors and sensors all over my body. My husband was sitting by my side, completely helpless to what his wife had tried to do to his baby. A social worker came in and told me that I would be going to a different hospital for some inpatient monitoring, and that I would be going there by ambulance. I realized while I was lying on the gurney that I was being buzzed into an area of the hospital I'd never been in before. I smelled cigarette smoke. The only reason to smell cigarette smoke inside a hospital is if the people inside aren't allowed outside. This is when I realized I was in the psychiatric ward. I was wheeled down a quiet hall to a sterile room. My shoelaces were taken. I was told to wait for a nurse who would read me the rules. The rules went something like this. If you don't eat, we have ways of making you eat. If you don't listen, we have ways of making you listen. And then I was told that visitors were limited to an hour a day. I was only allowed to see my husband an hour a day. Cody was allowed to come in, bring me a few things from home, and say goodbye. And then I was left all alone. Alone except for the nurses that checked in on me every hour. I wasn't allowed to go to sleep with the door closed. A woman woke up in the middle of the night screaming about killing her husband. I had an OB nurse, a nutritionist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, a pediatrician, a social worker, and a perinatologist who checked in on me regularly. I had to go to 3 group therapy sessions and 2 private sessions of therapy a day. Some patients had deep wounds that were stapled shut and bandaged. Others had charcoal stains around their lips. I sat in my room most of the day staring down at the street I used to play on as a kid, staring at all the people with normal lives going about completely unaware that I was stuck up there all alone. It was the darkest, scariest, most miserable situation I've ever been in. Humans should not be treated like that. If I learned nothing else while I was there for 3 days, I learned that I never want to go back. I couldn't tell anyone where I had been. I was ashamed. No one likes a baby killer. Why would I ever admit to being one? But the people who did know finally believed me, finally believed the hell it was being trapped inside my pregnant body. I was ashamed of this until recently. I made a mistake. I'm human. And the Lord obviously wants to keep me and my baby here, or we would have had toe tags that cold day in September. There's no logical medical reason why my daughter came out of that perfectly healthy, and for this I'm very grateful. I'm not ashamed now because I have a message. If someone says they're not doing okay, please listen. I tried to tell someone that I was not well a week before I overdosed. They brushed it off as pregnancy hormones and sleeplessness. I didn't want to push. Maybe it was just pregnancy after all, but that's just my point. Those who truly need your help will rarely shout for it. They'll suffer silently, hoping anybody will notice. Those who are truly hurting will not want to draw attention to themselves. I didn't want to be a burden or seen as a complainer, so I tried to figure it out myself. And I failed. But I was blessed through my failure, and not everyone is that lucky. Thank you.